Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in this evening for our online Bible study. Let's get into it. I welcome you. If you are new to the study, I'm Pastor Dave St. Aubin. It's a joy to be with you here this evening. Tonight, we will be looking at the book of Ezekiel, chapters 47 and 48. So I invite you to grab your Bibles, open them up to Ezekiel 47, grab something to take some good notes with, grab a beverage, grab a snack, and let's get into it. Well, again, good evening and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. I do pray that your day has been going well. Pray that your week has been going well, and appreciate you being here this evening. So we continue our journey through the Bible one chapter at a time, and we are now in our final night of study of the book of Ezekiel. We are looking at the final two chapters of this book, so we've made it all the way through now, 48 chapters in this book of Ezekiel. And I appreciate you being here this evening. This is going to be a longer study. Last night we cut off. I was going to do chapters 46 and 47, but chapters 47 and 48 really focus on the land. We've been looking at this temple in the millennium, in the return of the Messiah. And chapters 40 through 48, we've seen this vision of Ezekiel, the diagram, the way it was to be built, this temple, the outer court, the inner court, the holy place, the most holy place. We looked at all of the dimensions. We talked about the altar and consecrating of the altar. We talked about the priestly duties, for the priests from the line of Zadok and those who were not. And we talked about the sacrifices and worship and the holy days, the Sabbath day and the new moon days and the festivals, how to worship on those. Now the focus shifts to the land. And so chapters 47 and 48 really tie together, and that's why I wanted to do them tonight as one study. So it's going to be a long study, so get settled in, but this is going to be our last one for a while because we're going to break for the week after tonight. But chapter 47 is first going to focus on the first 12 verses, at least, on this new temple river. So a lot to look at here. Let's get right into it. Open up to Ezekiel chapter 47. If you don't have a Bible with you, not a problem. As always, we put all the verses up here on the screen for you so you can follow along, take some good notes tonight. And let's start with verse 1. And we're going to look here at the temple river. So verse 1, the man brought me back to the entrance to the temple, and I saw water coming out from under the threshold of the temple toward the east, for the temple faced the east, and the water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. So this guide who has been guiding Ezekiel through this vision, brings him back to the main entrance to the temple proper. And Ezekiel sees water flowing to the east from under the temple threshold. It's flowing to the south of the stairs on the right side of the temple as you face to the east. So it's flowing towards the east. Verse 2, he then brought me out through the north gate, led me around the outside to the outer gate facing east, and the water was trickling from the south side. So the man then brings Ezekiel through the north gate to the outside of the outer wall of the temple enclosure. And just south of the east gate, he sees water spurting out towards the east. This was a continuation of the stream that he had just observed inside the temple enclosure. Verse 3, and as the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits, and then he led me through water that was ankle deep. Now make note of the measurements and the depth of the water. So first, this guide takes his measuring line, and he measures 1,000 cubits, which is about a third of a mile east from the wall following this course of water. And he leads Ezekiel across this river that was ankle deep. Verse 4. And he measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me through water that was knee deep. And he measured off another 1,000 and led me through water that was up to the waist. So another 1,000 cubits away, another third of a mile, and the water is knee deep. And then another 1,000 cubits, another third of a mile. Now the water's up to his waist. Verse 5. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river that was too high to cross, because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in. It was a river that no one could cross. So another 1,000 cubits, another third of a mile, in this small trickling stream that was ankle deep, knee deep, waist deep, is now too deep, so deep, that they can't cross it standing up. In fact, it's so deep they would have had to have tried to swim across it, but no one could cross this without swimming. So what this description suggests is some major topographical changes would have occurred east of present-day Jerusalem by this time of this millennial reign. And the water in this time will follow the contours of this new altered terrain, not the past landscape, not the present landscape in the time of Ezekiel, not the present landscape today. So there's going to be some type of a major topographical change to the layout of the land. Verse 6, and so he asked me, Son of man, do you see this? And then he led me back to the bank of the river. And when I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. So this guide is making sure that Ezekiel sees what's being described, what we just saw described in these previous verses. And then he brings him back to the river's edge. And along the edges of both sides of the riverbank, many trees were growing. Now, rivers, just by their nature, do that. They provide life to plants, to animals, to people. You'll see rivers lined with trees in many places today. So nothing unusual, but this guide is making sure Ezekiel is aware of this. Verse 8, and then he said to me, this water flows toward the eastern region, goes down into the Arabah, where it enters into the Dead Sea, and when it empties into the sea, the salty water there becomes fresh. So this guide is explaining that this river flowing out of the temple continues east, empties into the Arabah, which is the Jordan Valley, and eventually empties into the Dead Sea. If that were to take place today, the way that the topography of the land today, that would involve a drop of almost 4,000 feet from the Temple Mount, which is 2,400 feet above sea level, to the Dead Sea, which is below sea level. So had this taken place in our lifetime today, you can imagine this 4,000 foot drop in elevation from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. But this is going to be a different layout of the land at this time, at this millennial reign. Verse 9, swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. Very interesting. We'll come right back to that. There will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there and makes the salt water, the Dead Sea, fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. These millennial waters are going to purify the waters of the Dead Sea, and this sea is going to come to life. The Dead Sea contains about 26% mineral. Normal seawater contains about 4% mineral. The Dead Sea is dead. It's called the Dead Sea for a reason. Nothing lives in it. But this future river is going to flow into it. It's going to give life to everything. Along its banks, plants and creatures will gather in swarms, and fish will swim in its waters. It's all going to come to life. The Dead Sea today is a symbol of just barren desolation. This future change to the Dead Sea coming to life, it's a visible reminder that God turns death into life. God specializes in changing the unchangeable, and that's going to happen here. Verse 10, and then fishermen will stand along the shore from the En-gedi to the En-aglaim, and there will be places for spreading their nets, and the fish will be of many kinds, just like the fish of the Mediterranean. So the Dead Sea is going to become so full of many different varieties of fish that all kinds of fishermen are going to come to fish for them. From the En-gedi, which is on the west side of the Dead Sea, to the En-aglaim, which is on the northwest shore near Qumran. This is a desolate area today. If you've ever been, it's just desert. It's wasteland. There's nothing there. You would never see a fisherman at the Dead Sea. In this time, it's going to be full of life and fishermen fishing for this great variety. Verse 11, but the swamps and the marshes, they will not become fresh. They will be left for the salt. So the entire Dead Sea region would not become fresh. The swamps and the marshes are going to remain salty, perhaps as a means of providing salt and other minerals for the people. Don't know, but some of the area will remain saline, remain salty. Verse 12. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will never wither, nor will their fruit ever fail. Every month they will bear fruit, because the water from the sanctuary, the temple, flows into it, and their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing. So fruit trees are going to grow around the Dead Sea. Nothing grows there now. There's no fruit trees growing around the Dead Sea. But they will. And they will not only grow there, they will remain continually healthy and productive. They would be so fruitful, they're going to continually bear fruit. People will eat of this fruit. They'll use their leaves for medicinal purposes. This desert will become a rose. It's something to imagine God bringing dead things back to life. This is what's going to be coming. This is what Ezekiel sees in this vision. And now from verse 13 through chapter 48, which we'll get to here in a little bit, we see the boundaries and the division of the land. So there's two special areas of attention here. The concern that God's people were going to occupy the full land, and concern that the Gentiles will still have an inheritance. So let's look at this. So we're going to look at first the boundaries of the promised land and this inheritance. Verse 13. This is what the sovereign Lord says. These are the boundaries of the land that you will divide among the 12 tribes of Israel as their inheritance, with 2 portions for Joseph. You are to divide it equally among the tribes, because I swore with an uplifted hand to give it to your ancestors. This land will become your inheritance. So God is specifying to Ezekiel the boundaries of this future promised land. And he's going to list the names of the tribes and these places that the people of Ezekiel would have known. None of these places really that we're going to look at here in a moment are identifiable today, but to the time of Ezekiel, they would have been. And so each tribe out of the tribes was to receive an equal allotment of land. Not like the division of the land in the day of Joshua, when some tribes received more land than others, and we go back to Joshua, and you go back and the books that we looked at, when the 12 tribes were allotted their land, some of them got a lot, some of them it was smaller. Now it's going to be equal. And this division of the land will fulfill God's promise of giving the land to the Israelites. Verse 15. So this is to be the boundary of the land. On the north side, it will run from the Mediterranean Sea by the Hethlon road, past Label Hamat to Zedad, Berotah and Sabraim, which lies on the border between Damascus and Hamat, as far as Hazer Hatikon, which is on the northern border of Hauran. Now, again, can't identify these places today, but what this means is the northern boundary would run from the Mediterranean Sea east, following the road to Hetlan, to the entrance to the town of Zedad, through the region of Hamat, near Berotah to Sabraim. It would then run through Hazar Hatakan on the border territory of the Haran. We don't know what that means, but here's the northern border. To the people of the time, they would have understood what Ezekiel was saying. So this boundary will extend from the Mediterranean Sea to Hazar Enan along the northern border of Damascus, with the border of Hamat to the north. That's the northern boundary. Some of these sites that we're reading here stood within the region, stood along the border region. Again, we don't know. Take this, though, as surface level, that starting from the northern part of the land working south, there would be equal divisions of land, almost like step stacking, right? Blocks on top of each other, if you looked at it from the side. But these are going to be equal areas of land. That's the northern border. Verse 18. On the east side, the boundary will run between Haran and Damascus, along the Jordan between Gilead and the land of Israel to the Dead Sea as far as Tamar. And this will be the eastern boundary. So the eastern border will run between the territories of Haran and Damascus along the Jordan River, between the land of Israel on the west, Gilead to the east, and this boundary would continue south through the Dead Sea area to the town of Tamar. Northern boundary, and then the eastern boundary. Verse 19, on the southern border, it will run from Tamar as far as the waters of Meribah Kadesh, and then along the Wadi of Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea. This will be the southern boundary. So the southern border will run west from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh, to the brook of Egypt, and along this stream to the Mediterranean Sea. So starting at the Mediterranean, going east, down, west, verse 20. On the west side, the Mediterranean Sea will be the boundary, to a point opposite Lebo Hamat. This will be the western boundary. So the west border would be the Mediterranean. It's hard to imagine it like a rectangle, because the Mediterranean cuts into the land, and the Jordan River is not a straight river, but you can almost look at the land today and get an idea of what this would look like. So there's the four borders, verse 21, and God continues now. Here's your border. Now you are to distribute this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. You are to allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the foreigners that reside among you and who have children. You are to consider them as native-born Israelites. Along with you, they are to be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. In whatever tribe a foreigner resides, there you are to give them their inheritance, describes the sovereign Lord. So the Israelites are to divide the land. They have the boundaries. Now divide it. So if you think of a rectangle, Mediterranean on the left, Jordan River on the right, northern border, southern border, and now we're going to slice it sideways into equal allotments of land. But not just for the Israelites. The Gentiles who lived among them could dwell in this land as well. That's chapter 47. 47 really focuses on this river flowing out that brings life. And now chapter 48, the final chapter of this book, we see the tribal allotments of this land. So first we start with the north, verse 1. These are the tribes listed by name at the northern frontier. So starting from the northern border, Dan, the tribe of Dan, will have one portion. It will follow the Hethlon road to Labo Hamat, Hazar Anan, and the northern border of Damascus. Next to Hamat will be part of its border from the east side to the west side. So the tribe of Dan was to receive the northernmost section of the promised land. Next is Asher. Asher will have a portion. It will border the territory of Dan from east to west. So again, starting at the northern border, Dan, and then Asher, verse 3, and then Naphtali will have a portion. It will border the territory of Asher from east to west. Dan, Asher, Naphtali, verse 4, Manasseh will have a portion. It will border the territory of Naphtali from east to west. Remember, these are all equal sections of land. So starting in the north, Dan, and then Asher, and then Naphtali, and then Manasseh. Verse 5, Ephraim will have a portion. It will border Manasseh. Verse 6, Reuben will have a portion. It will border Ephraim east to west. And then verse 7, Judah will have a portion, and it will border Reuben. Now, the order of tribes from north to south was Dan, then Asher, then Naphtali, then Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Judah. 7 tribal allotments of the 12 tribes, all of equal size. It's what we just saw in chapter 47, verse 14. And since they were all of equal size, and since the east-west width of the promised land would vary depending on where the Mediterranean cut in and where the Jordan cut in, the north-south distance probably wasn't equally spaced out. So you can't think of here's a section, here's a section, here's a section. What they all were equal size. So as the Mediterranean cut in, maybe the borders were a little bit wider between north and south for some of these tribes. But note the order of these tribes: Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Judah. The order of the tribes here doesn't conform to any other order of these tribes in Scripture. They're not like what Joshua assigned in Joshua chapters 13 through 22. They are not as large, some of them, as what the tribes were allotted in Joshua. What's happening here is there's a general progression from the least faithful, Dan, to the most faithful, Judah. Judah is from where the Messiah came, out of the tribe of Judah. Jesus is out of the tribe of Judah, and that receives the blessing of being adjacent to the holy allotment where the temple is. The tribes descend, or they ascend in order from least faithful to most, and also they descend from Jacob's concubines to his wives. So Jacob's concubines, out of them came the tribes of Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Gad, which would be farthest south. We'll see that in a moment. Those that descended out of Jacob's wives received the land at the center of the promised land. So there's a reason for this, right? There is an order to what is being relayed here to Ezekiel. So we see these 7 tribes, and now we see the holy allotment, verse 8 through 22. So verse 8, bordering the territory of Judah from east to west will be a portion that you are to present as a special gift. It will be 25,000 cubits wide. Its length from east to west will equal one of the tribal portions. So again, equal size. And in the center of this special place will be the sanctuary. The special portion you are to offer will be 25,000 cubits long, 10,000 cubits wide. So starting in the north, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Judah, and then this special area with the temple sanctuary, which this land would be the same size as the other tribal allotments. It would have a section 25,000 cubits wide, about 8 miles, and right at the center of it would stand the temple, the sanctuary. Verse 10, this will be the sacred portion for the priests. It'll be 25,000 cubits long on the north, 10,000 cubits wide on the west, 10,000 cubits wide on the east, 25,000 cubits long on the south, so it's rectangular. In the center will be the sanctuary of the Lord. Verse 11. And this will be for the consecrated priests, the priests out of the line of Zadok, the Zadokites, which we looked at a couple nights ago. They were the ones who were faithful in serving me. They did not go astray as the Levites did when the people went astray, which is the whole reason they lost the promised land to begin with. This verse 12 will be a special gift to them from the sacred portion of the land, a most holy portion bordering the territory of the Levites. So this special allotment was going to be dedicated to the descendants of the Zadokite priests who remained faithful to serving the Lord. This would be a most holy place next to the territory for the other Levitical priests. Verse 13. Alongside the territory of the priests, the Levites will have an allotment, 25,000 cubits long, 10,000 cubits wide. They must not sell or exchange any of this land. This is the best of the land, and it must not pass into other hands because it is holy to the Lord. So next to the allotment for the Zadokite priest, where the sanctuary was at the center, next to that would be another allotment. This would be for the Levite, the Levitical priests, same size. The Levitical priests were not to sell it. They weren't to trade it. They weren't to get rid of it. It was holy. It was consecrated to the Lord. Verse 15. And then the remaining area, 5,000 cubits wide, 25,000 cubits long, will be for the common use of the city, for houses, for pasture land. The city will be in the center of it. And verse 16 will have the same measurements, the north side 4,500 cubits, the south side 4,500 cubits, the east side and the west side 4,500 cubits. So the remaining portion of this allotment would be 8 miles wide by almost 2 miles long. This would be for the holy city and the open spaces beside it. This would be for common use of the Israelites. It would be open. Their homes would be there. Verse 17, and the pasture land for the city would be 250 cubits on the north, 250 on the south, 250 on the east, 250 on the west. So this pasture land, the city itself would be 1.5 miles square, open space border on all 4 sides. Just like we saw that green belt area around the temple in chapter 45, this would be pasture land, open land, green space. A lot of cities today are known as places of rebellion and moral corruption. This city is going to be a place of eternal rest, well, at least millennial rest, 1,000-year rest and refuge and personal fellowship with one another and with God. Verse 18. What remains of the area bordering on the sacred portion, running the length of it, will be 10,000 cubits on the east, 10,000 cubits on the west. Its produce will supply food for the workers of the city. The workers from the city who farm it will all come from the tribes of Israel. So this 3-mile wide agricultural area on the east and west sides of the city would be for the production of food for those who lived in the city, and farmers from Israel would be the ones to farm this. Verse 20, the entire portion will be a square, 25,000 cubits on each side, 8 miles square. A special gift that you will set aside the sacred portion along with the property of the city. So this total holy allotment, including the city and the adjacent lands and the territories for the Levites and the Zadokites, it's almost 70 square miles. It's a huge area that God is setting aside for the people. Verse 21, what remains on both sides of the area formed by the sacred portion and the property of the city will belong to the prince. This will extend eastward from the 25,000 cubits of the sacred portion to the eastern border, westward from the 25,000 cubits to the western border. Both of these areas running the length of the tribal portions will belong to the prince, and the sacred portion with the temple will be in the center. So the property of the Levites, the property of the city, will lie in the center of the area that belongs to the prince. The area belonging to the prince will lie between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin. So the prince would receive the rest of this allotment on the east and west sides of this square between the boundaries of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. So just to try to simplify what this looks like, you have the promised land in rectangular form. And out of the land will be equal apportionments of this land to the tribes. So Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Judah, and then this special holy area. And surrounding the holy area would be allotted to the priests, the Zadokite priests, and the prince. And then we come to the rest of the allotments. That was 7 tribes. There are 5 left, and that comes in the rest of this this section, chapters 20 or verses 23 through 29. So as for the rest of the tribes, the other 5 tribes, Judah, Holy Land or holy area, then Benjamin. So the holy area will be surrounded, so to speak, or on either side of it, bordered by Judah to the north, Benjamin to the south. Benjamin will have a portion. Verse 24, Simeon will have a portion. Verse 25, Issachar will have a portion. Verse 26, Zebulun will have a portion, and then the southernmost tribe, Gad, will have one portion. Verse 28, the southern boundary of Gad will run south from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh, right, the southern border that we just saw, along the Wadi of Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea. So the tribal allotments of the south of this special territory, Judah, and then the holy place, and then Benjamin, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad. Why would the tribe of Benjamin receive land next to the holy allotment like Judah did? Well, possibly because Benjamin was one of Rachel's sons, Rachel being one of Jacob's wives. The Benjamites also supported David and were allies with Judah when the kingdom split, and they stayed with the southern kingdom, Judah. Verse 29. So this is the land. You are to allot this as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel, and these are their portions, declares the sovereign Lord. The total land was to be divided, and the tribes would all have equal portions, and the Gentiles would live equally within with the Israelites. And that concludes the description of the boundaries that started in chapter 47, verse 13, up to this last verse 29. And now finally we come to the city and its gates and the name of this city. So this last section of Ezekiel, these last 5 verses, focuses in on the city at the center of the promised land. So verse 30. These will be the exits of the city. So first God is specifying the gates in and out of the city. Beginning on the north, which is 4,500 cubits long, the gates of the city will be named after the tribes of Israel. So Ezekiel isn't naming the city. The assumption is it's Jerusalem. That's a good assumption because in Zechariah, when we get to the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, he will name this city as Jerusalem. So although we never see the name Jerusalem mentioned here, it is the holy city Jerusalem. Next verse, the 3 gates on the north will be the gate of Reuben, the gate of Judah, the gate of Levi. So 4 walls, 3 gates on each. The gates on the northern wall will be named Reuben, Judah, and Levi. On each of these 1.5-mile long walls, there would be 3 gates. The ones facing the north are named in honor of the tribes of Jacob's firstborn, Reuben, the kingly tribe of Judah, and the priestly tribe of Levite. These were all Leah's sons. Leah's sons were Reuben, Judah, and Levi. So there's an order to this, right? Verse 32, on the eastern side, which is also 4,500 cubits, another mile and a half, 3 more gates. They will be named Joseph, Benjamin, and Dan. Benjamin and Joseph were Rachel's sons. Dan was the son of one of the concubines, Bilhah. That goes way back to the time in Genesis where we saw Jacob. Verse 33, on the southern wall, which is 4,500 cubits, 3 more gates. They will be named Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. These were Leah's other 3 sons, Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. And then on the western wall, which is 4,500 cubits, a mile and a half, 3 more gates, the gate of Gad, the gate of Asher, the gate of Naphtali. The west gate or the western gates would bear the names of the sons of the 2 handmaids of Jacob, Zilpah and Bilhah. We looked at, you can go back to Genesis for that. And their sons were named Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. 12 tribes, 12 gates, named in specific order, so to speak. But what they really represent is accessibility to the city. There are 12 entryways in and out of the city. The New Jerusalem that will come in the eternal state, because remember, this city, it's not named Jerusalem, but that's what it is. And when we get to Zechariah, again, we'll see this. There are 12 gates. This is just the millennial reign. And then comes the eternal. In the book of Revelation 21, where John sees the New Jerusalem, the holy city coming out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband, will also have 12 gates, 3 on each of its 4 walls, named for the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Jacob. And this new eternal city, this new Jerusalem, will also be square, but it's also going to be cubed, or like a pyramid shaped. Revelation 21 verse 16 is going to be enormous. A mile and a half square is a pretty good sized city, which is what we see here. This is going to be much bigger, the eternal city, Jerusalem. It's going to be much larger. Revelation 21, you can read that and you'll see that. So we have Jerusalem today in the time of the return of the Christ for the second advent and his reign on earth for 1,000 years. We'll have this new temple complex, and then in the eternal state, when the new Jerusalem comes down from God out of heaven, it will be identical to this, but not exact. Very similar, but not exactly the same. It'll look the same, but it's gonna be much bigger. The distance all around will be 18,000 cubits. So this millennial city, the circumference, the perimeter of this city is 18,000 cubits, less than 6 miles. The one, because it's a mile and a half on each side. The one that comes in the eternal reign, the eternal state, the new Jerusalem, it's going to be massive, right? But we'll get to that when we get to the book of Revelation. And the name of the city from that time on is named The Lord is There. In Hebrew, it's Yahweh Shema. To us, it's Jerusalem. So the name from the day of its establishment, this 1,000-year reign, is called in Hebrew the Yahweh Shema. The Lord is there. This indicates that the Lord will forever reside among his people. He will never again depart from his people. He will never again send them out of his land. He will dwell with them forever, and they will enjoy unbroken fellowship with the Lord that was intended from the time of creation. The book of Ezekiel, it ends with the description of this new Jerusalem, as does Isaiah, and as does Revelation. But the new Jerusalem of Ezekiel is millennial. It's 1,000 years. The new Jerusalem in the book of Revelation is eternal. The main meaning in chapters 40 through 48, we have this whole description of this temple complex, and it seems very dry and confusing, but what's the meaning of all the symbolism here? Well, it's very clear. The vastness of the dimension of this thing indicates the transcendent greatness of the final temple. The measurements, the cube measurements, symbolize divine perfection. The description of the ritual, the sacrificial ritual that we saw, we see the absolute purity that comes through true worship. The waters that were gushing out of the temple and bringing life into the Dead Sea is symbolic of the fullness of life of God. It's God's blessing. The returning of God's glory through the eastern gate, never to depart, tells us that sin is removed. God does not dwell among sin. Sin will be removed in this eternal city that comes down out of heaven, and righteousness will finally triumph. And putting the throne of God right in the center of it symbolizes the ever-enduring glory of our Lord. 22 years and 48 chapters later, Ezekiel began this book with a vision of a storm that pictured the destruction of the old city of Jerusalem and God's departure from it in verses 10 through 11. Now, 48 chapters later, 22 years of his life has gone by. He ends the book with another vision of the establishment of the new Jerusalem and God's permanent residence. Ezekiel begins with God, he ends with God, and between these great visions of God, in chapter 1 of his calling, and chapter 48 of the Lord is there, sandwiched in between all that, is the unsparing record of the failure of humanity and our sin and judgment of God. But God's judgment all works to his glory, and this book ends with the one thing that makes heaven what it is. The Lord is there, the presence of the Lord. And that is the book of Ezekiel. You have made it through another book, so congratulations there. And I appreciate you being here tonight for this very long study, but we made it through this book. Tomorrow we won't have study. It'll be Christmas Eve. Thursday is Christmas Day, and Friday our studios will be closed, so we won't have any more study this week. We will resume next Monday, the 29th, with our first look at the book of Daniel. But thank you for being here this evening. I do pray that this has been a help to you, and I appreciate you being here. Have a very blessed and Merry Christmas. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Till then, take care. God bless. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.